Good morning and welcome to Get Real America.
Where we are getting real, getting down to the nitty gritty of the stories and giving you the stories behind the stories that you usually don't see.
I'm Brittany Brown.
I'm Bill Edwards. And a good Tuesday morning where we're keeping an eye on the tropics these days, especially around here. But in Florida, they are really prepared, getting prepared. It's passing, Ian is passing western Cuba right now as a Cat 3. We'll go back out into the open Gulf and probably will be could be Cat 4.
Wow, Bill.
This time tomorrow.
Scary stuff. Hopefully, I know that Florida's been preparing, so I hope that everyone has an evacuation plan if needed, but everyone's staying safe down there in Florida. And I think it's headed our way, isn't it, Bill?
Well, yeah, it's gonna be coming through Georgia. How much we're going to get here on the coast is only a matter of speculation at this point. Governor Brian Kemp has not declared a state of emergency yet, but everybody is on standby, marking time at this point. We don't know. Probably, if it's in a coastal Georgia, it's probably going to hit the southern part and coastal, like Brunswick and stuff, more than it does us. But there'll be a lot of coastal flooding. There'll be riptides and things of that nature off the coast. Coastal South Carolina is going to be affected. One of the worries is, and of course, once again, this is all speculation, is that how fast the storm is moving. If you remember a few years ago, that storm that stayed over Houston, it ran into Houston.
Yeah.
It would have been, had it gone right on through and moved, that would have been okay. But it just stayed for days and days, and water just poured and poured, and they had that huge, horrendous flooding situation there. Governor Kemp is worried about that here in Georgia, that if it stalls out over Georgia, we could have a big flooding problem as well. Right now, the Florida Keys are going to start getting hit today. A lot of rivers in Florida are going to be flooding as well, and the entire state of Florida pretty much is under a warning, and the Governor DeSantis has declared a state of emergency there. Right now, as we said, Governor Brian Kemp is marking time here, waiting to see exactly what's going to happen next.
Yeah, and I think, with all the flooding that we've already had in North Georgia, this could not be good. So hopefully, let's just have it move through quickly, and I guess we'll keep.
Well, we've had a lot of rain here for kind of unusual for us over the last few years to have as much rain as we've had. And so there's not a whole lot of places for the water to go here either. So it just depends. But it doesn't look like Savannah's in that cone right now. Could be Brunswick, but not us.
Yeah, it looks like it's going more west and less east, which might benefit the area of Savannah, but doesn't help our friends in North Georgia.
No, it doesn't. But don't worry about this panic buying and everything else. Like we said, you should always be prepared.
Yes.
Because we live in a hurricane area. So you should always have your hurricane kit, your plans ready, where you're going to go, how you're going to get there, what you're going to do.
Yes, and that should just always be the case. No need to go out and buy all the toilet paper, right, Bill?
Or the water or anything else. So just be ready and make a plan to leave if you have to.
Yes, and we'll keep you updated on the storm. Like Bill said, it should move through here around Friday and Saturday, so we should have a better update, I would say, even by Wednesday.
Yeah, that's when we'll feel the worst of it, and whether or not some predictions have the storm decreasing, others say it's going to be increasing. So it's all speculation at this point as to what it's going to do after it leaves Cuba, where it is right now.
Yeah, doesn't it depend on the water when it hits the water? What if it slows it down or
water temperature?
Yep.
That's what happens when it hits that open water, and as warm as the Gulf is, it could spool up a lot more. But then again, at the same time, we've had things like high pressure areas building, and that could push it one way or the other. You just never know. Right now it is, as we say in the biz, day to day, hour to hour.
Okay, I guess we will keep you guys posted on Storm Ian. And are there any other storms brewing, Bill?
Yes, there are.
Oh,
there's still some. That's one that's come off of the west coast of Africa. We're keeping an eye on that one as well, but it's still way, way out in the Atlantic and nothing to worry about at this time. Most of these storms, when they do happen, they just go up and become fish storms, go up in the North Atlantic and die. Unlike a Fiona that went up in the North Atlantic and then hit the Maritimes and caused all sorts of havoc up there.
Yes, because it's rare when it does that, correct,
Oh,
Bill?
very rare.
I mean, it's hardly ever that happens.
You don't usually see it happen. Moved to New England. One came through. You remember the perfect storm that came through just a few years ago that devastated New Jersey.
Oh, yeah.
Something really, really, really horrible.
Yes,
So,
and very rare,
but rare.
which is always good. I like to keep these storms rare, Bill.
And it's not man-made, by the way. It's not being caused by climate change.
No, I think One of the things that I read was something about the fact that we build more homes on the coast now.
Yeah.
And that's why we see more damage done to communities, is because that's where we've put our communities.
One of the reasons
So-
Katrina was so bad in New Orleans, about like that 15, 16, 18 years ago, was,
Was it really that long ago?
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Time flies when you're having fun, doesn't
I
it?
know. I can't believe
When
that.
when it came in, that once upon a time, there used to be a 20-mile buffer from the Gulf Coast and the mouth of the Mississippi Delta into New Orleans of wooded area, of forestry. That has been, what was gone. And so Katrina didn't have any problem just going right into the city. And of course, as you know, it moved right through. Didn't do as much damage at first, but as you know, George Bush and Karl Rove snorkeled in and blew the levees so that it would flood New Orleans, so it'd be worse.
That's horrible.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So
Glad we haven't seen another Katrina in a long time. Although I guess Houston had their version of that not too long
Yep.
ago. But the fact that that's where we build our communities, those are kind of the expectations that we should have. That hurricanes do exist and they always have. So
and if you watch most of the rest of the news media, they'll make it much worse than it actually is.
isn't that in most cases?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember just in Katrina, when I was watching one of the reports on the National Barak Channel, NBC, one morning on the Today Show, they had one of those reporters sitting in this woman was sitting in a boat in the middle of one of the in New Orleans, in a street in New Orleans, and you could see the water, and she's talking about how bad the flooding is, and all of a sudden behind her a guy walks by. Water up to the ankles.
Oh my
Even
gosh.
Matt Lousy, who was still anchor there at the time, started laughing. So they're trying to tell you how bad the flooding is, and people are walking. but they gave you the impression with sitting in this boat. It looked like, from the camera shot, it looked like there was still flooding. This guy walks by, it was about ankle deep.
Of course. That's horrible. Anything for the shot, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Anything for the shot.
For sure. So
Oh, goodness.
things are going to be a lot worse by the media reports than they actually are. It's bad enough when you tell the truth.
Right.
For goodness sakes, quit exaggerating and telling people how rotten it is but if we don't get electric cars, it's going to be, things are going to get worse.
Yeah, I mean, if that were true, Bill, why does everyone keep buying their houses, all these elites, on the coasts of everywhere?
Yeah, the Dalai Lama
California,
doesn't seem to
Florida,
be worried about it.
Massachusetts, I mean.
Yeah, he's got a place there at Martha's Vineyard that could have housed all of those illegal aliens that came through the other day, right there on the water. So apparently he's not worried because he did say he could control the tides.
So interesting, Bill.
Yeah, isn't it? Yeah.
When you start thinking about these things, it's like, yeah, this doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
So you Democrats, thank you for that.
Yes. And, on a happier note, Bill and I actually had the opportunity to go to a local place yesterday and visit with an executive director, and it's called Thrive Savannah. It's an amazing facility that they've built here, and they're building a community around this, and I thought it was really impressive to sit down with Paula and talk about it.
Thrive is incredible, and what they have done to save babies' lives. It's a pro-life clinic.
And I think it's 788 babies that they've saved so far.
It has been so successful, it has gotten national attention. People say, how have you been this successful? How have you done so well? And they've just gotten this magnificent piece of equipment that came through grants and things of that nature. That is one of the most, it is the state-of-the-art diagnostic for ultrasound for pregnant, to see if women are pregnant.
Yes, and I believe she says it picks up prior to 6 weeks. Unlike
very early.
Yes. So it was interesting. We talked about the Stacey Abrams comment yesterday, and then we were able to go to Thrive just out of pure happenstance. And it was interesting to be able to see that machine and just also what they're able to do for women. They do a lot of women's health. So, they help the women through their pregnancies. They do STD testing, and all of their services are for free.
Exactly. There's no charge whatsoever, unlike Planned Infanticide, which is nearby, and they have people outside Planned Infanticide with information saying, look, if you're going in there, you're going to get medical help or whatever it is. We do that for nothing. Why
Yep.
don't you come see us first?
Yes, and I will say their facility is bright. It's cheery. They
Amazing.
have done such a good job, and I think just
You feel good just going in there.
yes,
And for maybe frightened young women who ended up with an unexpected pregnancy, this is extremely comforting. Thrive is unbelievable, and the lady who started it, actually, she feels like this is a calling to her from God and from Jesus Christ, and she is so her profound faith is so inspiring, and you can see all the things that have sort of fallen into place that just a coincidence.
yeah, everything is kind of just aligned with her vision too. Like Paula is one of the most visionary people I've ever met, and she has a vision board in her office, and you can see how everything has really come to life. I think she has 2 more things on her vision board that are not quite there yet, but I have total faith that she will get there with those things.
Save so many lives, and like I said, it's becoming a national model. I was saying, how in the world did you become this successful with something with this pro-life clinic? And it's just amazing what they have done, and the staff that they have is absolutely fantastic.
Yes, they were so sweet. Even so, of course, it's probably easier for me to go in there, and everyone's female. And then we have Bill, and of course our producer went with us, and they were just as lovely to you as they were to me. So
If I were a Democrat, they might have asked if I was pregnant. So
right. Men can get pregnant.
yeah,
So interesting. But the other thing that I thought was just amazing was the mobile unit that they have parked out front. It
Yeah.
is bright pink. You cannot miss it, I don't think,
No.
unless you're totally blind. But it's a mobile clinic, and it's a great billboard for Thrive Savannah.
and it's actually a mobile service. I mean, they have imaging and everything in there as well, so they can do all the diagnostics that they need to right there. So if the old saying goes, if you can't, Mohammed will come to the mountain will come to Mohammed. So
Yes, they're doing really good things at Thrive. And you guys can actually go to an open house happening at Thrive this weekend.
find out more about it. Sunday afternoon between 2 and 4, they're having an open house at Thrive of Savannah, and you can see these wonderful facilities that they have and why they have become so successful. You will be impressed, I can promise you.
Yes, you will. And the good news for you guys is that Paula will actually be on our show. We'll be doing a feature on her because she is going to be one of our heroes at Get Real America.
And by the way, that's 2 to 4 Sunday afternoon, this coming Sunday afternoon, and which is the 2nd of October.
I can't believe we're going into October.
October
It's
starts on
crazy.
Saturday. Oktoberfest on the way. In fact, some of the Oktoberfest activities are already underway in Savannah and probably maybe where you are.
Yeah, I will say my neighbors, they were this weekend, they decked out their whole house in Halloween. They
Yeah.
have 2 little kids, so I get it. But I was like, whew, it's, I can't believe how close it is, Bill.
Yeah, we have some neighbors that are doing the same thing. All right, coming up.
We're going to be talking about less local news and more national news when we get back.
It says Get Real America. I'm having some coffee.
Always having coffee, Bill.
Than anything else? You realize that? The point is, we ask so much of you. So much of you. I've not...
last 3 years, Georgia's been tested in ways we could never imagine. And it fell to Governor Brian Kemp to successfully lead us during these troubling times. Georgia is still first in the nation for business. Our unemployment rate is the lowest in state history. Today, people come to Georgia to succeed, start a business, raise a family. Kemp has always backed the blue, stopping the radical left from defunding local police. He passed a tough new election integrity bill that, as the governor likes to say, made it easy to vote and hard to cheat. And while some during COVID-19 shut down their economy, Kemp kept our schools and businesses open while keeping Georgians safe. A long list of accomplishments: fighting human trafficking, increasing teacher pay, greater access to quality health care. A governor who works for Georgians. All of us. Governor Brian Kemp.
First of all, what I can do to make things better is bring people together. I love this country. I believe in peace through strength. If we have no strength, we're gonna have no peace. I believe in backing the blue. I believe in the Constitution. I believe that everybody should have a chance to have their faith. Do we have problems? Yes. Can we solve them? Yes. Georgia is my family. The United States is my family. So I'm gonna fight and take care of them.
I'm Herschel Walker, and I approve this message.
Welcome back.
to Get Real America.
Gosh, we both had a frog in our throat.
Yeah, sure did.
Sorry about that, guys.
Keeps happening. Yeah, sorry about that too. Yeah, but we're glad you're here on this Tuesday morning. Yeah. Here it is, the 27th day of September, and we are about 28 years away from the signing of the contract with America that was that Newt Gingrich, when he was from Georgia, was Speaker of the House, and the Republicans came up with this idea. This is what we're going to do, and it was a landslide victory for them. It was an absolute wonderful piece of legislation, or not legislation, but a sort of a framework of here's what we're planning to do. Well, the Republicans now these days have maybe been buoyed by the fact that we've got such a lousy administration of people that haven't got a clue as to what they're doing and helping to destroy America, that they've come up with another version of that. And our 1st District Congressman Buddy Carter of Georgia says that he's on board.
Yeah, let's take a look at that clip.
Congressman Buddy Carter of Georgia says Republicans plan to regain majority in the House, and they're planning ahead. The party is working on what's called the Commitment to America plan.
It's based on 4 pillars, one being that we're going to make sure that America is strong, another that our nation is safe, that our future is free, and that our government is accountable. And we've got 7 different task forces working on things like health care, on our economy, on China, on telecommunications. What are we going to do with that? We need legislation. We need a plan on how we're going to address those issues.
We also asked Representative Carter about the alleged top secret documents found inside former President Trump's Florida estate. He didn't say much, only telling us that he's more concerned about why federal investigators were looking into Trump.
With you mentioning that pillar of government accountability, if there was wrongdoing found, or that something was out of place, do you think that it is worth prosecuting the former president, should he have not gone about something correctly?
Well, look, that'll be up to the courts. That's why we have a judicial branch, and a legislative branch, and an executive branch. And the powers of each of those different branches of government are to be decided and have been established for many years. So that'll be up to the court system.
I'm not so sure. I didn't like that answer. Because
which one?
Well, the fact that that'll be up to the courts. Well, they have so weaponized and combined all of these that they're overstepping their boundaries. Yeah, we have a tricameral government. It was established for a reason, and they're all supposed to have equal power. Judicial branch having the least, but now it's become the most. And the way it is being abused by Merrick Garland and his Confederates is pathetic. All that stuff that was down at Mar-a-Lago, first of all, the president didn't take it down. That's packed up and sent there by somebody else. It's at Mar-a-Lago. He still has Secret Service protection. So this place is locked up as the FBI had requested. This is all at the FBI's request, if you'll remember. It is locked up, and that place is guarded by the Secret Service. Now, do you think that's not a secure place to have top secret information?
Here's the thing. It's only because he's a Republican president
Exactly.
that they didn't like and that wasn't part of their club.
They haven't gone after President Clinton stuff that he kept in a sock drawer.
Correct. And there was also, that was a court case that was decided by a Obama judge, I believe.
Yeah, I believe you're right.
I don't understand why they continue. Actually, I do understand. The fact that they keep going after conservatives is very dangerous. And I think that, unfortunately, we have to take back the House and the Senate so that we can see some of these, hearings play out and see what really has been happening.
I hate to say it, but we're going to have to dismantle the FBI.
Absolutely.
I mean, it is out of control.
Well, the fact that we have all these whistleblowers coming out,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and then the whistleblowers come out and they complain, and then they,
Lose their job.
exactly.
Yeah, they're supposed to be protected. Remember,
whistleblower protections, right?
Yes, exactly.
That's
So what Buddy just said is moot, because
Well, also-
they're not going to have this whole DOJ and administration are working hand in glove.
And I think Buddy is a very nice person.
Oh, he's wonderful.
However, that is not an answer that is satisfactory to the American people.
Mm-hmm.
I get you have moved into this politician role, but talking like a politician only makes people more upset. And
Exactly.
I think, they don't give very clear answers, and they really learn how to negate the question.
But he's spot on the commitment to America. Tell people what you're going to do. You can't just, as a former governor of Mississippi, Haley Barbour, was on with Sean Spicer and company, Spicer and company on Newsmax last week. And one of the things he said was, we realized that when we did the contract with America, we couldn't just say Democrats bad, Republicans good. We had to give people a reason to vote for us. So he came up basically with the blueprint for all of this. And we're coming up on the anniversary of the signing of that. And two of the people who are no longer in Congress were the signers. And Sean talked to them. One of them, Bill McCullough of Florida, and Buddy Carter's predecessor in that seat, Congressman Jack Kingston, who was there for over 20 years, talked about the new commitment to America, how it's different from the one that they signed, and their opinion on it.
I think we have a clip.
I think we do.
Right now, dozens of people are hand counting ballots in the race for DeKalb County Commission District 2 after a candidate discovered a problem in the electronic tally.
May 24th, DeKalb County, Georgia. Voters went to the polls to vote on a local county commissioner race in District 2 between Lauren Alexander, Marshall Orson, and Michelle Longspears. The end result from the Dominion machine showed Lauren Alexander received 34.67% of the vote, Marshall Orson receiving 41.35% of the vote, and Michelle Longspears.
House Republicans who signed the contract with America, Georgia's Jack Kingston and Florida's Bill McCollum. Congressman, good to see you both. Congressman McCollum, I want to start with you. How important, looking back, was the contract with America when it came to Republicans taking back the House in 1994?
I think it was very important. I was vice chairman of the House Republican Conference. I campaigned in 97 congressional districts that year. And I can tell you that we used it, we leaned on it, we had it recited by our candidates in an organized way, and it made very emphatic points about how different we would govern if we were given the majority of the chance to do it. So I think it was very important.
Congressman Kingston, when you look back on that, how important do you think it was for candidates to have that and make that contrast?
It was huge, Sean. As Bill said, as part of leadership, they knew we would all communicate the same message. And that message was something, as Newt just said, that 60% of America agreed with, things like a balanced budget, things like term limits, things like welfare reform, tax reform, child tax credit, ending unfunded mandates to states because of the excessive federal regulations. These were very popular items. And as Bill remembers, when we were working on these things for the first 100 days of that very exciting session, we had 30 or 40%, or excuse me, 20 to 30 Democrats who voted with us. Not because they were suddenly becoming Republicans, but because their own constituents who had been voting Democrat said, this makes sense, we need to pass it.
So I want to ask you both a question. I'll start with you, Congressman McCollum. Based on what Kevin McCarthy unveiled today in this commitment from America, what do you think is similar to the contract and what do you think is different?
Well, it's a platform, what's come out today, a viewpoint of what the ideas are that are basically Republican principles, things that would guide the new Congress if it's put into power. And those are similarities. There's a difference in the fact that we had 10 very specific pieces of legislation that ultimately was even more than that, were even more than that when they were put forward in the new Congress. They do not have specifics like that in this, and I think there's probably a reason. It's a different time. I'm not faulting them for it, but that is a difference of some significance. One thing that's also similar, though, even though they don't speak of it that way, is that there are several rules changes that can be done the first day. One of them is exactly the same, as they want to end proxy voting, and that needs to be done again. I don't see the commitment to ending the ability to keep serving as chairman of these committees and subcommittees that we put in. That was term limits on ourselves. But there probably are. They're just not spelling them all out there.
It's funny that you brought that up. I was looking over the contract last night, and I saw that, and I thought exactly, I'm glad you hit on that. We talked about proxy voting 3 decades ago, and Republicans outlawed it then. Democrats obviously brought it back under the guise of COVID, so it's interesting that it's doing that. Congressman Kingston, same question to you. What worked with the contract, and what's different now?
Well, I'll tell you what worked with the contract is, in order to get the majority, you're going to have philosophical differences within the family party. So Northeast Republicans and Southern Republicans or Western Republicans have different priorities. But when you're focusing on a legislative agenda, everybody is united because they know this is why we got elected. So when they're talking about broad themes like a strong America that has a good supply chain, inflation under control, lower gas prices, a safe America where you're not defunding the police and where you don't have open borders, a free America where parents are telling the schools what they want their children taught, and accountable government where the Department of Justice doesn't have one standard for one party and another standard for another. Same way with the FBI. Those are themes that grab a lot of American people and say, yeah, this makes sense. This is what I want out of my government. So I'd say that commonality is same sort of thing that we got with the contract with America. The difference is, Sean, as you know, communication has changed so radically, and America's a lot more divided now than we were. So I think there are going to be challenges in that they're going to have to constantly be selling this, getting this through the media mob more than ever. And but I think Kevin McCarthy is absolutely up to the task.
So let me just ask you this, though, Congressman Kingston.
All right, Bill, there was a lot there, wasn't there?
It was, yeah. He's got a lot more confidence in Kevin McCarthy than I do, but because I'd like to see Jim Jordan in that position. That's not going to happen.
It's never going to happen.
But Kevin McCarthy beats Nancy Pelosi coming and going, who was not well received, by the way, in New York over the weekend.
No, I think that there were chants of "you're a liar."
Yeah.
That she couldn't even get a word in, which was
she
wonderful.
was booed off the stage. It was amazing.
It was
mostly, it was a Hispanic crowd?
Yeah, it was Hispanics that were doing this because they understand what they're doing and how they're gaslighting everyone.
And the girls on the pew, the View, just thought that was just horrible. The Hispanics just don't understand what's going on. They don't understand how important Nancy Pelosi is to them.
That's the thing. Don't let these people tell you that you don't know any better.
Yeah, don't, and by the way, don't watch The View because your IQ will
drop significantly.
Considerably. Yeah, because their combined IQ is approaching single digits, I do believe.
And that is a cumulative of all of them. I mean,
yeah.
I don't think that they're very good at the narrative repeating the narrative, repeat the narrative, but they're not good at actually explaining anything. So
they're very good at being stupid.
I mean, they definitely are not educated on the issues enough to have a good argument. So one of the things that they were talking about in here, you know what, I would also like to see Matt Gaetz as the speaker. Like, yeah. I think he is just, he's fire. So he is just.
I think he's getting rid of all those trumped up charges against him that he's about to get over, thank God.
Which is great, Bill, but at the end of the day, it's been over a year since all of this stuff started. The legal fees that he's had to pay for that, and also the, what that does to your reputation when they start telling you that you're trafficking women, underage women. I mean, come on. And I'm sorry, his fiance is beautiful. She is wonderful. And it was as soon as they got engaged that all of this came out. I'm just like, oh my gosh, that poor, like what a horrible situation to put someone in.
And it's unfortunate you can't unring a bell because those things will always be hanging over you no matter what. And some people are still going to think that you are guilty.
Yeah, because they hear all of the chaos, and then when stuff is fixed or recalled, there's no big deal about it. So people that originally heard all the chaotic stuff about this person, they believe it, but they never hear the huge response that it's not true, because they like to keep that quiet to continue the damage done to his reputation.
Sure. When they make a mistake on the front page of the paper, if they admit that there was a mistake, it's there several days later on page 17A.
Yes, and at the very bottom in the smallest print they could possibly do.
Yeah, about the smallest font you can possibly get. Say, oops-a-daisy.
Exactly.
And it's interesting because I remember F. Lee Bailey came to speak at Ole Miss, invited by our University of Mississippi Law School years ago, back when he was in the zenith of his career, cover of Newsweek and Time Magazine and things like that. Gave a magnificent speech and later wrote a book of the same title called The Defense Never Rests. And he said, if you ever suffer the consequences of being accused by the police, said, most people will feel you are guilty under the tenuous logic that if you didn't do anything, the police wouldn't have been accusing you in the first place. And he said, as a defense attorney, he says, I am never congratulated for seeing when somebody is acquitted. And one of my clients is acquitted. He says, I'm never congratulated for seeing to it that justice was done. That I was always said of getting the guy off. He said, which carries its own implications.
Yeah, until I will say, we do the podcast, which, I'm a big fan of all podcasts, but there have been a lot of these murder podcasts that have come out that have documented some of these people that have been charged, and they were, there was a guy, I think it's in Baltimore, it was the Serial podcast. It was a big podcast about, I think 5 years ago, and they just acquitted him. But it took this deep dive into the investigation in order for that to happen. So once you're convicted, it is so hard to roll that back. So I think that unless it happens to you, you don't understand the repercussions of these big mistakes of the false accusations.
2020 did a wonderful investigative report years and years ago about a guy who was accused of some altercation at a bar, and somebody was killed there. And he'd been in prison for years, and they went back and started doing timestamps and things and found out he wasn't there that night. They actually got him cleared. It took months to still get him out, even though it was proved that this guy was innocent. It took months to get him out. What is all the paperwork and everything, all the bureaucratic stuff? Because because first of all, the prosecutors doubled down on their accusations. And say, no, here's the evidence that the guy wasn't there that night. This was somebody else. And it still took months to get this guy out of jail. I don't understand that.
Well, so I think that's one thing that we can agree on with a lot of our liberal friends is that we do need to look at the prison system, look at, how we're, booking people and putting people in prison. And we need to reform that because it should be a lot easier to get an innocent person out of jail than that. Yeah,
but in many cases the pressure on the police because a crime may have been so heinous that whether it's murdering a child or something along those lines, and you say, well, we've got to get this guy behind bars.
Well, and I think that that's the other thing, Bill, is that I think a lot of these crime shows, they have made it seem like it's so easy to solve these cases, and it just isn't sometimes. We do have a lot of technology and things like that, but it doesn't mean that it makes the case, able to be solved in 24 hours, Bill.
Well, you have also what happens, Brittany, is you have one of the what they call the jury these days gets so jaded watching these shows, like when CSI first came on, hugely popular show.
Yes.
And they were expecting, and juries now expect all this forensic evidence come pouring in. Most departments don't have the kind of budget that they have. And by the way, when I talked to a real CSI investigating lady here in Georgia some years ago, and she said, I never went out investigating in a pantsuit.
That wasn't a thing?
Yeah, but they're expecting all this forensic evidence to come in, all this DNA evidence to come in, and most places don't have that kind of budget. They don't have those resources that you see on television.
Yeah, and I think that that's the other thing, Bill, is that if these crimes are happening in a smaller town, someone that's never dealt with a murder, how are they supposed to? They don't know exactly what they should be doing, how to secure a crime scene like that.
Sure.
And so that goes back to more training, right?
A little community around here, let's say Pembroke or Claxton, someplace like that. Something happens there. Well, the Claxton Police Department doesn't have those kind of resources. They don't have detectives. They don't have forensic investigators. They have to depend on the Georgia Crime Lab, which is very good, and the GBI, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, which is also very good. But they don't have the resources locally to do this.
Yeah, absolutely not. And I think, like I said, I listen to a lot of true crime podcasts, which is both good and bad, right? But they've been able to solve cases, and they've also been able to look at cases that were ruled as accidents, and they actually were not. And they've been able to even just go back and do some, investigative journalists are incredible because they are able to do things and think about things in a very strategic and a very logical way. And they've been able to help police solve these cases that are, 20, 30 years old.
I've been impressed with some law professors have these classes where the students actually go in and start doing the investigation and then do all and as part of their classwork and get involved in real crimes and have solved a lot of them. They got a lot of innocent people out. If you remember, about 3 seasons ago, on America's Got Talent, an elderly guy, I think a 60 or 70-year-old black gentleman came on and sang and just brought the house down. And they asked him about his background. He said he'd just gotten out of, he'd spent 38 years in prison in Louisiana for something he did not do. And finally, new DNA testing came along to find out he wasn't the guy that they said he was, or didn't do the crime that they said he was accused of. And he got out pretty quickly after that, fortunately. But you can't get 38 years of your life back. And it all came about by, he was writing letters, and it looked like in the early 90s he was going to have something done. But it came down to one of these classes, I think one of these legal classes, where they did the investigation and got this guy and found out that this guy was actually innocent.
Yeah, and I will say, humans are great and everything, Bill, but sometimes we make stuff up to be true, or we imagine, our memory is not as good as we think it is, and so you can falsely identify someone very, very easily, and so that's how a lot of this stuff does happen.
There's a Chinese proverb that says, the palest ink is better than the best memory. And your memory starts falling off. That was another thing that Bailey brought out in his talk at Ole Miss that night. Was he said he's gone into courtrooms where he said usually most trials, if it's a contentious capital case especially, it's maybe 5 years before it comes to and so all of a sudden these eyewitnesses, and he said, and eyewitnesses sometimes, he said that's actually the worst kind.
Yes.
Because he said usually you don't see something happen. Your attention is drawn to it after it happens. But the mind has this wonderful built-in fallacious machine that backs up the videotape in our brain and furnishes us with the details of what we thought we saw.
Yep.
And he said, I could promise you, I could have somebody run out here right now, make a loud noise, throw a little ketchup on the podium. He said, I could take affidavits from every one of you and they would contradict one another. He said, I've been in the courtroom where the guy said, I recognize that man, even though he was masked and it was standing behind a gun that looked about this big. I recognize him by the line of his jaw. He said it gets that ridiculous in a courtroom. He said circumstantial evidence is actually the best if you have enough of it and can bring it together. And he said, and he gave us the great example of circumstantial evidence. Said, you came in tonight, the street was dry, stars were out. You walk out after my presentation tonight, and the place is wet all over. You will assume that it has rained.
Yes.
You haven't heard it rain, you haven't seen it rain, but that evidence is enough. He said, if you have enough circumstantial evidence like that, that's enough to either acquit or convict somebody. But eyewitness testimony, he said, is the worst.
Yep, and it's been the cause of a lot of people ending up in being falsely accused and falsely imprisoned.
Exactly.
So I think that's something that really should be thought about when we start investigating things.
Some people have an agenda too, because he said if you were ever victimized by some silver-tongued but fork-tongued liar, and they can tell this great story in court, the jury's probably apt to believe them.
Absolutely. The best storytellers, you want to believe them, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I think that, there's been, unfortunately, a lot of false accusations happening over the last 5 to 10 years that have really harmed a lot of people's perspective on different things in this country, for sure. So people with the best narrative, right? Doesn't mean it's the truth. It's just the better story.
I go back to the Rodney King story, where the media kept showing you over and over the police, beating this guy. And it did get out of hand. Don't infer that I'm saying that it didn't get out of hand and that there shouldn't have been disciplinary action. But you didn't see the full videotape that I did, because the networks originally, I was working in television at the time, the networks actually sent the whole thing down at first, and then they sent the edited version later, and the news and the national stories and national media just used the last little segment of it. The police stopped this guy for speeding. He was doing like 85 in a 25-mile-an-hour zone.
Wow.
There were 2 other people in the car with him, both of color as well. The police didn't get these guys out of the car and start beating them. Rodney King actually, when he was finally stopped, gets out of the car and actually goes back and starts confronting the police. He started it. And although it escalated and got out of hand, you didn't see that part of it. And when I mentioned that at a high school gathering one time, at my alma mater, as a matter of fact, here, and the black kids went absolutely ballistic. I thought I was going to need a bodyguard to get out of there.
Yeah, I think that we're still seeing this all over the country, Bill, when we're talking about these things. So, and the fact that we have all these cell phones out right now, that's the scary part, is people can clip anything that they want to make it look.
Everybody's got a camera, and it's connected to a worldwide net.
Yes.
Al Gore's marvelous invention. So coming up next,
we're going to be talking more about what's going on in Georgia, and Herschel Walker and Warnock are debating on October 14th, which we're really excited about, and we will keep you posted on where you can watch that.
You just saw a little clip of questions about voting machines that we put up just before the Jack Kingston and Bill McCullough interview. We're going to delve into that a little bit more next.
I can't wait.
All that's coming up on Get Real America, as we get rid of some, we got some technical snafus that happen to us sometimes, and so we're...
Hi, this is Herschel Walker. I want to endorse Bruce Thompson as our new labor commission, because he's going to do the best job you've ever seen for the great state of Georgia.
Listen, I'm standing here with the great Herschel Walker. We all know what's happened in our U.S. Senate. It's time for a change, and I 100% endorse Herschel Walker to represent Georgia and the United States as we take back our country for the people of Georgia and for the United States.
God bless. Education is so important. People have always talked about, what are we going to do? You're going to have school choice, you're going to have all different types of things. And I want to try to figure out, how can we get kids an education? It doesn't matter what zip code you're from, but get them the education they need, because education is an equalizer. And I truly, truly believe that. And that's the reason I'm here, just to see how this is working, what is going on, how you're getting funding, and just what's happening. We put people in office that doesn't seem to care about this country anymore. And I said, you know, if I can change it and I just sit back and do nothing, what kind of man will I be? But right now, I know I can change something.
No one who is alive today had ever experienced a true pandemic. And I'm hoping that now that this is over, people are going to, recognize that some serious errors were made and not repeat those. That's the best you can get out of it.
So what do you tell those people?
Vote Republican. That's what a lot of them are going to do anyway.
Yeah?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, more than 1 million people transferred over to the Republican Party. I think in 2021 alone. Find out what that number is.
There's 159 counties in the state of Georgia. And since I got into this race, I've been visiting almost every one of them just to hear from the people. They know I'm a winner. They know that I work. Well, the way I'm different is I'm not a politician. Never have been. I'm a country boy that grew up in Georgia. I understand Georgia, and I'm going to fight for Georgia. We got to get this country back together. We got to support our police. We got to support our military. Most of all, we got to support our citizens. But what I am going to do is listen to the people. So I'm going to get out here and I'm going to work for you. And I say what I'm going to do and I do what I'm going to say. And we're going to make things happen.
Welcome back.
Going down the home stretch here on Get Real America for this Tuesday morning. Once again, keeping an eye on Hurricane Ian that could become a Cat 4. It's already a Cat 3 passing the western segment of Cuba right now and headed for Florida. At least that's what we think. And could be a Cat 4 by the time it gets there. And that he only goes to 5. So this is a mean, mean storm. And it's going to affect us one way or the other Thursday and Friday and probably over the weekend. So just be prepared. Not too much of us, and we're talking about us, but we mean the state of Georgia. But it is going to affect us here on the coast as well. How much we don't know yet, but we're not going to get the brunt of it as some of the other places are.
Yeah, we'll keep you guys posted on how serious it's going to be for Georgians. Definitely very serious for Floridians right now.
You watch the tropics right now. Governor Kemp has not declared a state of emergency here, but he's got everybody on standby.
Which is probably a good call.
It is. Earlier, you saw just a little snippet of a clip of some worries that we have about voting machines here in Georgia. We've been trying to get rid of these machines that we have now. I was totally opposed to going to computerized machines to vote in the first place.
Right now, dozens of people are hand counting ballots in the race for DeKalb County Commission District 2 after a candidate discovered a problem in the electronic tally.
May 24th, DeKalb County, Georgia. Voters went to the polls to vote on a local county commissioner race in District 2 between Lauren Alexander, Marshall Orson, and Michelle Longspears. The end result from the Dominion machine showed Lauren Alexander received 34.67% of the vote, Marshall Orson receiving 41.35% of the vote, and Michelle Longspears receiving 23.98% of the vote. In Georgia, if one candidate doesn't get above 50% of the vote total, a runoff election is automatically held between the two top candidates, meaning Michelle Longspears was cut out of the race. But Michelle Longspears felt odd about the numbers, so she visited different precincts to double-check the tallies. Guess what? She noticed that in some precincts she didn't receive a single vote. But how is that possible that a candidate with 24% of the vote total finds precincts where she didn't receive a single vote? While statistically alarming, the real surprise came when she realized there was not one vote cast for her in her own precinct, the same one where she and her husband voted for herself. Spears immediately demanded a hand recount of the results and got one. On June 1st, the results were released, and the difference between the Dominion machine count and the hand count was shocking. After the hand count, Lauren Alexander gained 355 votes. Orson lost 1,298 votes, and Spears actually gained 3,620 votes, making her the new runoff candidate. And here's the best part. When you add them all up, the hand count shows 2,810 votes more than the Dominion machines reported on the 24th. This is huge. In the small county commissioner's race, with 15,500 votes total, the Dominion machine tally was short by nearly 3,000 votes. What does that say about all the other races that were conducted on these very same machines? This is proof that the machines cannot be trusted. If Spears had not sounded the alarm, no one would have ever known.
That has been my worry from day one on how these things can be manipulated when we go to these so-called computer votes and how these things can be skewed.
Yes, and we were talking a little bit before our show about how this would work, and the excuse that we've been given is that they didn't program the machines based off of redistricting, which, okay, that's an interesting argument. However, when I go in to vote, we scan our ID, and it tells you if you're allowed to vote at that precinct. So then you would go, you would cast your vote, and then you would put it in the Dominion scanner, which would count your vote. And
I think.
Supposedly, allegedly, according to how this is supposed to work. But they're saying that because the machines were programmed wrong, they were missing votes. It makes no sense to me because the poll pad and the Dominion machine should not be linked at all because your vote is supposed to be anonymous. Mm-hmm. So how would that even make an impact? I really have tried to figure this out. And for me, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Bill, can you explain it to me?
No. Okay. And we were warned about these Dominion voting machines. Several states have turned them down, I think including Texas. Refused
Good for them.
Did not want to use them. And so we don't know exactly how we wound up with them. I don't know whose palms got greased.
Well, Bill, I could tell you that the person that is the head lobbyist for these Dominion machines worked in the Secretary of State's office previously. So you're welcome for that little tidbit of information. So, I mean, I think that those are the things that we really should be looking at is the connections to lobbyists and what state offices they've worked in, because that's how this whole thing works. And we see it time and time again where these kickbacks are happening.
We can be called climate deniers, or that we're just causing trouble and just sore losers, but this has to get straightened out. And you can hear Mike Pence or others that saying we need to move forward and not look back. No. We don't need to move forward if we're still making the same mistakes. We need to find out what happened. That's what you call the after action report. That's why, what does a football coach look for when he puts up the films of last week's game? He's looking for mistakes.
Ways to improve, Bill.
Ways to get better. So we've had people that have actually signed affidavits saying that they saw the cheating that was going on, of voting machines being tampered with. And these were affidavits where if these people were lying, they could go to prison. And a case in point was up in North Georgia where they'd set up the machines, and because they're electronic, they are sensitive to temperature change. So the temperature in the room needs to be somewhere around 75 degrees, 72 to 75 degrees, maybe up to 80 or so. But that's the optimal temperature for these machines to operate. This lady swore on an affidavit. She went in the night before. They set everything up. She comes in the next morning and said you could have hung meat in the place. It was so cold, they couldn't get the heaters to work. They called the HVAC people. Around lunchtime, the HVAC people came to them and said, there's nothing wrong with the air conditioning system. Somebody turned off the gas.
And there's been so many things that have come up like that, Bill, that it's like we do need to look at these things, and we can walk and chew gum. We can move forward while also making the corrections needed to make sure we have.
Yes, sir. We didn't fall off that turnip truck yesterday just because we in the sunny South. We ain't that stupid.
Well, not only that, I mean, you guys are the elites. You guys are the smart ones. You guys have all these degrees, and you're the political elite. So fix it. Figure it out. Like, you're supposed to be smarter than us. So I think that that's something that's very frustrating to me, is that we see time and time again that they they would rather do nothing than do something because they don't want they don't want to be called names.
They look down their nose at us, and by the way, some of them have just gone nuts by degrees.
Yes.
Some people have got more degrees than a thermometer, and they still couldn't pour water out of a boot if the instructions were written on the heel. We have a lot of those in this administration.
Yes, we do. And I think that with the voting machines, this is a Democrat race that was in DeKalb County. This was not a Republican race that was challenged. This was a Democrat race. So this is not a Republican versus Democrat issue. This is an American issue. Anyone that votes, we should be concerned about this.
This is serious because I grew up when they actually taught civics and how important it was for you to vote, what a privilege it was for you to vote. When we see people, what was the first time that we got people to vote in Iraq? They stood in line for days with mortar shells falling nearby and machine gun fire. And they were so proud to get that purple finger after they voted. We ought to do that here.
Yeah.
After they voted, they went down and you got your purple finger, and to prove that you had voted already, so you couldn't vote again. Sorry, Democrats.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
Well, did you know that only 12% of Americans vote?
Yeah.
That's crazy. I was shocked when I heard that. I was like, what? Who doesn't vote? These people impact your life we can see how painful it is.
And I think you ought to be taken off the polls, off the rolls. If you haven't voted in 3 consecutive elections, your name should be, and you have to go back and re-register. And it's easier to register to vote, by the way. Now, when I know I'm old, but when I turned 18, I had to go to the courthouse. That's the only place you could go to register to vote. You had to go to the courthouse. You couldn't vote. You couldn't register at Circle K or 7-Eleven. You couldn't register at the gas station. You couldn't register at the jewelry store. You had to go to the courthouse in order to register to vote. That's the way it still ought to be. It should be difficult to vote, and people should make an effort to do it. And giving you 3 or 4 weeks advance voting to me is ridiculous, and it costs a lot of money too.
Well, Bill, I went to poll watcher training yesterday.
Oh, goody.
Yeah.
How was that?
It was very boring. But, one of the
Can only
things.
imagine.
Yes, it was 3 hours.
Ooh.
Yes. But this lady sitting next to me, she's like, I hate that they've taken away the ballot boxes. It made my life so convenient, so easy. Literally, we didn't have to do anything to vote. It was just like we put it in the mail and that was it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I don't want that to be, I don't necessarily know that I like the fact that people are like, I just want this to be as easy as turning on Netflix. I don't want to have to think about it. I just want to be able to do it from the comfort of my own home and, not be bothered, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Inconvenienced to vote, if you will. And
Should be an inconvenience.
I think you should want to, the people that I want voting, Bill, are the ones that want to make an effort to vote and the ones that are excited about what that means.
And have educated themselves on the candidates and not look for whether the D or the R is next to the name.
Exactly. I wouldn't say I love researching candidates, but I will say it takes me about 3 to 5 days to go through and investigate every single person because you have to go through the judges, and those are nonpartisan, school board members, nonpartisan. So there were some nonpartisan things on our ballot, which is important to go and research, I think.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's it.
That's all we have?
We're
it's
done.
the end of our show. That went by so quick.
Time flies and you're having fun.
Absolutely. Every day with you, Bill. Always
We'll
a
be
good
back-
time.
We'll be back tomorrow and give you an update once again. Do your own research. Don't have to believe us. You can look it up for yourself. And also keep an eye on the tropics. Just be
Yes.
ready. Ian is coming somewhere our way. We don't know exactly how we're going to be impacted yet, but please just be prepared.
Yes, and we'll keep you updated on that story all this week. And remember to follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Vimeo, GRAnewsmedia.com, Spotify, or Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you guys tomorrow.
And one of the things that, by the way, just before we go, once again, the most accurate voting ever has been the one they used to do in Florida that was the hanging chads,
yeah. Yep.
the 2000 election. We actually had those things in high school. had a history teacher that gave us a test. You punched out the name, and he could put that thing in the machine. You could hand him. You say, "I'm through with the test." Okay, you made a B+.
I like it.
Yeah.
Making it easy.
So, but that made up thing that they tried to do, they tried to do that coup d'état down there in Florida. That didn't work. Worked in 2020, but it didn't work this time. That time, so the Democrats had to regroup. But that's been the most accurate of all the voting processes, and it's also one of the cheapest. It's where we ought to keep it.
Yes, I like to keep things cheap, and I like to keep things moving forward, Bill.
And I like to have it the fact that it's not run by computers.
I love that as well. I think computers have made it dangerous.
See you tomorrow.